Welcome to the Energy Tech Podcast presented by Opsite Energy. Today we are filming live from ENTELEC 2026, and we are excited to welcome Mike McCabe from Nazomi. Guys, welcome to Galveston.
Hey, Jeff, it is good to be here. I'm your co-host, Mike Flores, with the Energy Tech Podcast, again, right here at ENTELEC 2026 in Galveston, Texas. And we've got a great guest, Mr. Mike McCabe with Nazomi. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. You know, when I think of Nazomi, I do, consider Nazomi's space in terms of, I think of OT cybersecurity. And we're going to talk about that. But before I do any of that, Mike, let's talk about what kind of brought you in? Because you spent some of your career in the industrial and cyberspace. So kind of what brought you into that, man?
It was all by accident.
Yeah?
Yeah. No, actually, the OT space, similar to my start in cybersecurity, was around data security, data protection. And the company I worked for kind of lucked into a cybersecurity platform. And so I benefited from that and joined the cybersecurity community. Since then, I knew that OT cybersecurity or OT security was becoming a bigger topic, right? Yeah. And I think being on the bleeding edge of that was very exciting to me. And now that I'm getting to be here and a part of that conversation, it's a fun place to be.
When do you think that it started becoming a bigger topic? And here's what I mean. I've been around in the same space, and I saw where cybersecurity wasn't as prevalent in OT, ICS, industrial control systems, as it is in IT infrastructure. And so when do you think it took a turn?
I think realistically, the turn probably happened somewhere between 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really picking up steam now, right? When I start talking to site operators, managers, they can monetize in a matter of minutes how much it's going to cost when their facility is down for an hour, for a day, right?
You're right.
And in an IT perspective, that's a tough thing to pinpoint. And so, again, from an OT perspective, they're the ones that are bringing in, generating the revenue.
Right.
And when that revenue generation is at a halt, everyone should be concerned about that.
You're right. And I think there's two parts to that, right? So if you're, in this case, we'll talk energy because you've got lots of energy producers and others that are here. I think in terms of energy, if there's a shutdown at a plant or a shutdown at multiple plants as a result of a cyber attack, you're right. I think that relegates into the millions of dollars for any one producer. But there's also the cost of equipment. And what I mean by that is, and maybe you can add to this, but threat actors or nation states, those that push for a cyber attack, they're not interested in gaining dollars in a ransomware. They just want to damage equipment. They want that equipment shut down, right? They want the large scale pumps that, these large pumps that have to wind. They want those things breaking because they know the spare doesn't exist there. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. Sorry to make a Batman reference here, but if you go back to the Dark Knight where they're talking to the Joker and trying to figure out what motivates this individual, right?
Yeah.
Just wreaking havoc, causing havoc, chaos.
Yes.
That's kind of what they're after, right?
You're right.
So yeah, again, they're not after the money per se.
Right.
It's the notoriety. Hey, we did this.
Yes. No, I think you're right. And so understanding that kind of landscape, OT is what, I just had another guest where we call that, OT poor, right? The same level of cyber hygiene or cyber understanding just isn't in the same play with OT and ICS as it is with the counterparts in IT infrastructure, cloud. Everyone always talks about a hack. I might get hacked using my mailbox. But no one is as in tune as if, hey, you might get hacked using specific equipment on the plant floor, right?
Well, not only that, how do you know when that device gets hacked?
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have an interface.
No, I think you're right.
And if that thing's processing at a variable that's just fractions off, is anybody going to notice it?
Right.
Long term, there's long-term effects to it, but that immediate piece of it, you're not going to notice it.
No, I think you're right. And so, you bring up a good point, and this is going to lead me to your team, which is Nazomi. And when I think of Nazomi, tell me, based on what you just said, where Nazomi fits and what does it actually do for that case?
Absolutely. So one thing, just a quick little plug for Nazomi, obviously. Second year, Gartner Magic Quadrant leader, right?
Yeah.
And I think looking at what we've worked on, what Nazomi has worked on for since 2014, it's to help organizations from an industrial perspective understand what they have and secure it.
Yeah.
Now what they're able to do is now be more proactive about what's taking place. It's not just, hey, I've got my asset inventory, I know what I have that I'm trying to protect. It's now being able to predict, right?
Yes.
And then as soon as something does take place, you get to not only react to it ahead of time, but you're doing, whether it's patch management, and I know I said patch management in an OT perspective. Sometimes
Right.
it works, sometimes it doesn't, right?
Right.
But making sure that you're taking those controls and covering everything around that. So
Right.
most definitely, and the beauty of where we've taken Nazomi is artificial intelligence, AI, whatever you want to call it. I know
Right.
everyone's saying it. However, again, going back to a Gartner review, they're looking at our AI as the one to beat.
Right.
So being able to take an OT security team from zero to understanding in a matter of minutes, hey, how can I quickly ascertain what can I fix right now to improve my threat score, right?
Yeah.
And build upon that, and now, again, like I said, be more proactive than reactive.
So, okay, so you bring up a good point. You just said that. So tell me where kind of Nozomi fits in. Is it in span ports, sensors, the virtual applications in the OT space? I mean, where does that exactly fit?
Nazomi is able to deploy in many different aspects of your network. I think early on, most organizations wanted to understand what does my north-south traffic look like?
Yes.
And that's a great beginning point. But at the end of the day, and we've been talking about IT security as well as OT, when most of the threats have come into or have been introduced into an OT environment, it came from IT, right?
Right.
So that lateral mobility, so then the east-west traffic becomes a lot more important. So
Right.
now that we are able to capture that east-west as well as the north-south, now you have full visibility as to what's taking place and
Right.
can attack the situations much better.
So what you're saying is it's not enough, a lot of times they'll put out, whether you're CISA or you put out a standard, right, an IES standard, NIST, everyone puts out their standard. They're going to tell you, hey, you're right. You may want to take your network. You might want to segregate those types of the network so you reduce that east to west traffic. You're going to do these certain things. But what you're saying is, hey, it's going to take even more than that because of the introduction of, or the, what I call the connection or the convergence. That's another buzzword, the convergence of IT, OT. Now it becomes more common, right?
Absolutely, and the convergence is there. No matter what anybody wants to say, it's been taking place. I think everyone talks about the amount of warring or battling between IT and OT. It's something that's going to have to be accepted.
Yeah.
But how do you make that work? So having a solution that gives you the visibility so that it can be melded into one common platform, whether it's into a SIM, what have you, I think that's what most organizations want to see.
So in the clients that you've worked with, this could be energy, industrial, the industrial space. Give me an example of what maybe a recent customer, what it kind of looked like, a pre-Nazomi to a, hey, this was a before Nazomi, now we look back, and now we're looking at a deployment of Nazomi. What is the difference there?
Sure. And that's a great question. So we've got, I'll use one particular customer. They've been a Nazomi customer for 4 years.
Okay.
What was the original use case? We have no idea what's happening in our OT environment. They've deployed, and within that first year, deployed probably about 75% across their organization. Getting the understanding of what it is that they have, legacy or current models, right?
Right.
And then being able to keep them current, patching, etc. Like I said before. Now, what they're able to do is they've got a full inventory. They're able to understand from those assets, where are the vulnerabilities? Are they behind on patching? Are they behind on firmware? Is the product end of life and the support? And so
Right.
being able to see that and also being able to understand, hey, and we'll be able to provide, hey, here's that next model of the device that's going to be coming in that you can replace it with.
Right.
So again, giving them that visibility, understanding what's taking place in their environment, and allowing them to be proactive around the devices that they have.
So you're saying Nazomi provides both a proactive and a preemptive ability to really take a look at your OT assets is really what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And, in doing so, one of the things I'm seeing is there's a big push for private kind of LTE, 5G, OT networks, cloud-based applications, a movement across that architecture. And where does Nazomi play in that regard? Because I don't just want to limit it to, this side of, sometimes people think of the Purdue model, right? Hey, I don't believe that Nazomi just lives in layer 0 and up through layer 2, right?
I feel like we almost wrote a script before this. Something that we haven't talked about so far,
Yeah.
there is, and sorry to throwing out product names, but
okay.
Guardian Air is
Okay.
something that Nazomi has. First to market, nobody else is doing this, but the number of antennas that are in this device, we're able to identify cellular traffic, wireless traffic, drone traffic, right? So this may sound really Hollywood, but think about this for an example. Somebody attaches a drone, wireless repeater, zips it up to the 27th floor of an office building, and they're able to bridge that wireless traffic. Now, how in the world do you know how they're getting into your network, right?
Right.
So we're able to identify drone traffic, whitelist the devices, and all of a sudden something that shows up that's not on the whitelist shoots off an alarm, and now you can go take care of it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's kind of, as you and I both know, some of these are not, these are sophisticated nation state attackers. This is not just relegated to, somebody named Kyle in the basement of his mom's house. You're dealing with nation states now.
Absolutely.
I can revert back to when I was in about 2020, about 2021. I was invited to a meeting with the FBI, and in this meeting were producers. These were oil and gas producers. I was doing some cybersecurity training back in 2014 with the FBI. For whatever reason, my name popped up on some list. I felt like Tom Hanks because they came and grabbed me, said, "Hey, join us at a meeting," and I thought it was something wrong, but it wasn't. It was an actual meeting. This is around the time of the conflict with Russia and the Ukraine. And so you had more sophisticated nation-state attackers, and I think we're forgetting that this is not relegated to something small. These are sophisticated. They're going to bridge those networks. They're going to use a drone. They want to get as close as they can and try to capture the data, right?
Yes, absolutely. For me, it's mission driven, right? I mean, I think when I was in not downplaying IT security in any way, but I was protecting credit card numbers, right?
Right.
In OT, you really are looking at potentially protecting lives. Whether it was a hack that was taking over the thermostats in a house, or power generation that in the dead of winter now they can't get heat. You're really working and trying to help prevent human damage.
Yeah. So if someone is looking at, let's say I'm a regional producer and a player in West Texas of all places, right?
Sure.
So I'm this regional producer. I'm not a Chevron. I'm not a super major, but I want to do three main things. I want to consider cost. I want to consider complexity, and I want to consider the consequence of what I'm doing. How does Nazomi approach that?
It's the crawl, walk, run scenario, right? And I know that's used oftentimes, but really coming in and understanding what are the use cases that you guys specifically think you're trying to address?
Yeah.
And is there more that we can help you identify and address? And then make sure that you've got your arms around that from a security perspective, and then take those next steps.
Yeah.
So as you're asking, making sure that we meet those, but also making sure that we're thinking beyond just the present day.
Right. If someone wants to reach out, and get started with Nazomi, what are some of the things that you think they want to consider, when they get started? Like
Yeah.
they say, hey, I want to reach out to someone like Mike, and I want to look at Nazomi because, there's anyone can say, well, there's products in the space, but for you specifically, when you're talking about Nazomi, someone says, hey, here's what we really want you to think about, and here's what you can expect when you get started with us.
Ultimately, it's about outcomes.
Yeah.
And I think understanding what, and we're hoping that they have a good understanding of what their outcomes are, but sometimes when they come to us, they're like, well, we'd like your guidance on understanding what those outcomes are that we should be looking for. So I think the first basic thing, and it's table stakes. Anybody who's doing OT monitoring, OT security, you need to be able to get an asset inventory. Age-old example, you can't protect what you don't know that you don't have, right? So let's figure out what that threat landscape potentially looks like. And then being able to be proactive about it, making sure that those assets have been identified and making sure that you're able to protect those. At the end of the day, as we know in this space, there's a lot of acquisitions, divestitures, et cetera.
Right.
And how do we come into a situation and help you best be prepared for additional acquisitions, and then when there are divestitures, how do we cleanly let those go? So that's definitely areas that we can help with.
One of the things I want to just pivot to for a second here is, one of the things in 2026 I know is the rise of the AI agent, and we're seeing this more and more. We did an episode where I was, we had our top 5 predictions maybe for the year. For me, an easy one was AI and machine learning, but inside of that was an agent. What are some of the things that Nazomi's doing, not only to leverage AI and machine learning, but to ensure that agents have guardrails and that, hey, we're not, there's not just protection, but you can still invest in leveraging agents?
Interestingly enough, when Nazomi started, one of the co-founders had a PhD in artificial intelligence before it became AI.
Yeah.
Right. And so from its inception, AI was in its DNA. Today, as Vantage IQ is how we use the AI in our product.
Right.
But taking something like Vantage IQ, we've had security teams tell us, I've got a particular task that would have taken me 6 hours, and it's shortened it down to an hour.
Yeah.
Right. So, these are real world examples. But again, going back to the guardrails piece of it, this is something that would stay within your environment. Your data stays there, and we're working off of your data.
Yeah.
It's not leaving. So.
Got it. And so it sounds to me like also Nazomi's leveraging AI and machine learning for triaging, alerts, some automations that are built into the product, right?
Absolutely are, yeah.
And Mike, if someone wants to reach out, how can they do that to get started with Nazomi?
www.nazominetworks.com.
Nazomi Networks.
Yeah, absolutely. And by all means, spend a couple of minutes on the site. You're going to see from whether it's just looking at the landing page to going into contacts, we have a lot of information, but more importantly, understanding that we can take that whole journey with you.
Absolutely. Oh man, this is a great, Mike. I want to keep you, but I can't.
Thanks for having me.
No, it was good. And I've got more questions, but if you want to, Mike is here for today at ENTELEC 2026. You can catch him here at the Neve booth with Nazomi, Mike McCabe. I am your co-host, Mike Flores, with the Energy Tech Podcast. It was great to have him on the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Mike, thank you, man.
Thank you. Had a great time.
It was good.